most stressful game that I have ever seen as a San Francisco fan, because that game in itself, and you saw the text I was sending you, I felt every emotion in my body: disappointment, anger, frustration, happiness, happiness, euphoria. Like there were so many emotions in that game, and again, just speaking as a San Francisco fan, I'm 25 years of old, Dan. So I've been around the block. I've seen this team for a good portion of my life. I grew up a Niner fan. My father's the one that grew up a Niner fan and instilled that in my brother, my sister, my mother, myself. And to see the way they performed in that game against Green Bay was egregious. Brock Purdy, I love Brock Purdy. I support Brock Purdy. I think he's a step up from Jimmy Garoppolo. I think given what happened with Trey Lance, this was our best case scenario. He understands the offense. He's the prototypical quarterback that Kyle would like in his offense. But I can officially say, here, we don't play good in the rain. There were certain passes he would receive the ball from the snap, and you see him wiping his hand because of how wet it was. And again, that's no fault of his own. It's just the weather. But Dan, you saw some of those passes were incomplete. They were off, and I'm going to fault that to the rain. I'm not going to fault that on Purdy. I'm going to fault that to the rain. But give me your take. As unbiased, because you didn't have a dog in the fight. Me, obviously, I'm biased towards the Niners. What is your take on the performance of Brock Purdy and the Niners against the Green Bay Packers in that game?
Listen, so I was feeling those emotions as well, because although I didn't have a dog, in the fight, I definitely picked the 49ers to win. So when I saw that it wasn't going that route, I was beginning to get upset. You got people who say Brock Purdy is the real MVP. Now, when people say the real MVP, that means he's better than his own, to me, the real MVP of his own team, Christian McCaffrey. And he didn't play like an MVP. For those who don't know, Cowboys fan here, he played like an NFC Dak, where he did just enough to win. Just like the first half was ugly. Now, actually, that's a disrespect to Brock to say he played like Dak. He played slightly better than what Dak would play in a good game.
Thank you.
He did just enough to win, but that first half, I mean, McCaffrey on the sideline, he's hitting him in his toes. Like it was not pretty. Both ends were getting torched. I saw a lot of reckless playing. I saw Trent Williams get flustered, lose his cool. The guy kind of sold the call, and then the rest is history. The 49ers could have really taken themselves out of this game. And I mean, at one point they did. Jordan Love shocked me. I did not expect this from him. I know that these young quarterbacks have been going on runs in the playoffs. And, it's like that time where the Texans play the Ravens, and you're like, okay, it's about time that you have your exit here. It's been real. It's been nice. You got your experience. The MVP is going to take care of you, right? Mm-hmm. Which is what I expect the 49ers to do at this point. In my mind, the 49ers are sweeping every team except for the Eagles, which obviously we know doesn't happen because the Eagles get bounced by Baker Mayfield. Walk it like I talk it. But I'm expecting the 49ers to just basically walk every team down, because if you talk about weapons, just weapons alone on both ends, it's unmatched. We haven't seen a team this stacked like this for a while. I mean, this is one of the best teams I've witnessed in my life. So I'm expecting them to just go out there and impose their will. Right off the back, it didn't happen. I think one big flaw I saw in the 49ers was special teams. I mean, the Packers put it on you guys. Dude, it was interesting to see that, a team that wasn't supposed to be here was doing this. Now, rain or not, I mean, I feel like it rains more in San Francisco than it does Wisconsin, because Wisconsin is a snow place. I don't have the stats on that. I'm not a meteorologist, but San Francisco is a cloudy place. It gets cloudy. It gets, it's the morning dew beach. I just don't see it raining more in Wisconsin, in the Midwest, than on the Pacific West. So I don't know. I don't know about the weather. Like I said, I always like to say they're professionals. At the end of the day, they're there to play. They've played in every weather. I'm sure this is not Brock Purdy's first game in the rain. Unfortunately, he played like it was. And, you see him wiping his butt cheek to get his hand dry. I didn't see Jordan Love doing that. Jordan Love was throwing some of the most beautiful passes I ever seen. And I took some notes on this game. One thing I saw, second quarter, about 11 minutes, Brock Purdy was flinching under pressure. He literally, this play, I think it was third down. Jose, he literally, turns his head and throws it, to the opposite direction. And this was no Mahomey, no look. This was him flinching from a sack. There was, a couple things I seen. I was really studying Brock Purdy because if people are saying he's the real MVP, I need to see it. I'm not expecting him to run like, Lamar Jackson or have an arm like Josh Allen or Mahomes, but I'm expecting him to consistently be productive. I've never seen a quarterback throw the ball and turn their head in the opposite direction accidentally because they were scared. And this ended up being a throw that just hit the ground, like a lot of his screen passes in the first half. I mean, the second throw of the game, he almost throws a pick six. It was insane. It was insane to see that the pressure kind of got to him. I don't think it was the rain. I think it was the pressure of winning. I don't know if you guys remember in our last episode, I said, Brock Purdy has more to prove this year in the sense that last year there was no pressure. He was the backup. He was the guy that I was like, oh, well, he's performing. But now, given that he's been a serious contender for MVP, one of the best passers we've seen this year, is more on the line. I think it was pressure because this was his first real experience of him being expected to win it all. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I just feel like Jordan Love was dishing out beautiful, throws. It seemed like he was more poised. I think the common denominator we've seen this weekend, Jose, is that going for it all, trying to win it in one throw, is not necessarily the smartest thing to do. Because Josh Allen, him, you throw it up in the air like that, you're just asking for it to be intercepted. And we've seen that's how the game ended. I love the physicality of the Packers. I think that they were more physical than the 49ers, if that's something that can be measured. I think they were definitely more physical, and they got in the 49ers' heads, and a lot of tempers flared. I mean, the ref had to break up so many, personal fouls that offset each other is one thing that stood out to me. It looked like that was the Packers' game to lose when it should have been the 49ers to lose. So, yeah, that's my take on it. That was a lot. What is your take on Brock Purdy's performance? Do you agree with my take on him kind of being under more pressure now than he was last year? And how would you rate Jordan Love's, their competition in that game?
Well, I like what your take here, Dan, because you really gave me a lot to sink my teeth into. As you were speaking, I was taking some notes too because I wanted to hit some certain points that you addressed. To answer your question about Brock Purdy, sometimes I have to take a step back and we talk about culture and how the Niners have established themselves as a perennial playoff team. This is our fourth NFC title game in 5 years. We're supposed to be here, like you said, with the amount of talent, the arsenal that we have surrounded ourselves with and equipped ourselves with. We're supposed to be here, and we're supposed to play like we belong here. But Brock Purdy, this is his second year as our quarterback, his first full season as our quarterback. And granted, as you mentioned, he is a professional. He's supposed to be here in his own right. I think your take of this is now his team and he has a little bit more pressure on him. I agree with this take because last year we're playing with house money essentially. We don't really know what we have with Brock. We have a small sample size of what he's working with in terms of this offense. That's why I think in hindsight this game played so well to the Packers and Jordan Love. Because I look at Jordan Love and I see a lot of upside and I'm happy for the kid. I'm happy that he was able to come in after an Aaron Rodgers and kind of forge his own idea of what this offense can become. And I know Nick Bosa heading into this game had addressed that. He said with Aaron Rodgers, this offense had a little bit more of a freestyle to it. Aaron Rodgers was able to come out of the pocket and really freestyle the play. If the defense broke it down, he was able to establish a new play in a sense and really play as if it was backyard football. But Jordan Love is able to feed into LaFleur's offense and have that structure and that design that they would ideally like. I think Jordan Love played this game the way Brock Purdy did last playoffs. There wasn't that much expectation. We didn't know what we had with them, but now that they're the quarterbacks, he didn't have as much pressure. As you mentioned, they weren't supposed to be here. They're not. This is their game to lose. So being able to play freely, I think, played into the Packers' favor. The Niners, as we mentioned, they're the number 1 seed. They're supposed to be here. They're supposed to be in the NFC Championship. And I feel like we fell into that game, essentially a trap game that, hey, we're the better team. We're supposed to beat them. Whereas the Packers are, we're not even supposed to be here. We barely made it in as the 7th seed. So I compare to Jordan Love, not necessarily to Brock Purdy, but their scenario, what they're playing in. And this is his coming out party. We now can give Jordan Love his credit. And I'll give him the credit. The Packers gave one hell of a game. They had me sweating. When Jared and I, when we watch these games, we're very known in this household to watch games like it's church. We don't really say a lot. That's why when you were texting us, we had a little group chat going on. We weren't really responding because we're locked in the game. To the point where Jared had placed the chat on Do Not Disturb because he's locked in. And me, I would text back maybe after every drive because I have to see the whole thing in its entirety to develop an opinion, to develop my take. And when we watch games, he's animated. He's yelling at the screen. He's upset. And me, I'm sitting back and I'm taking it in. For this game, the roles were flipped. He was taking it in, and I was the one that was like jumping up and was upset. and for those who don't know, like Jared and I, we worked together. Dan, you worked with us for a little bit of time there. Jared was able to get the day off. He got coverage. I wasn't able to. I was at work, so I missed the first 2 drives of the game. I didn't see the opening possessions for either the Packers or the Niners. So here I am driving down, down the street, trying to make it just to, catch the 3rd drive if I'm lucky, and I did, greatly enough. So I didn't get to see much of those opening drives. And you talked about the pick 6. I think it's that argument of rest versus rust. We hadn't played a meaningful game in 3 weeks, and so it was expected on my end that we would kind of struggle against the Green Bay Packers because you saw the performance they had the previous week against Dallas Cowboys, where they, like you said, they completely walked them. They dominated them 27-0 at half. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. It wasn't supposed to happen. So we fell into that thinking, again, we're really rested, we're ready, but we didn't have the reps. And they can say all they want that, we practiced hard, we prepared. But in-game football is way different than practicing on the field with your own teammates. And I think we both can attest to that.
Yeah, when you're not, I'm sure they're doing, not tackling each other, just kind of padded practice, kind of run through. A walk through would be a better thing than to say practice, because I guarantee they weren't, full on trying to sack Brock Purdy. It's all different when you got a 300-pound guy moving at a 4.3 40 at you. It's a lot different when in the comforts of practice, nobody can probably touch Brock Purdy, especially in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to touch. Real quick. I'm sorry, Dan, but I wanted to touch on some of the things that we need to improve on. Because coming out of this game, I feel like this is the kind of game we needed. We needed a wake-up call. We needed to see that, hey, this is how quick it can all end before our very eyes. We can't take it for granted. We're in the playoffs, but there was that lack of discipline I saw. You mentioned Trent Williams. Trent Williams, as we know, was on the Washington Redskins, Washington Commanders for his whole career until he got to us. So he's not accustomed to being in the playoffs. He's now realizing that this might be his best chance to get a Super Bowl ring. And I'm not condoning his actions, but I can understand that frustration. And he needs to keep that in check because we're super close. We're one win away from entering the Super Bowl. But one thing that I saw that was very concerning were the penalties. You look at the Green Bay Packers, they finished with only 1 penalty for a loss of 5 yards. Whereas on our end, we had 6 flags costing us 83 yards. 2 of which were costly pass interference from Ambry Thomas, one of our cornerbacks, number 20, who I immediately was yelling at the screen, "What are you doing?" He's over here selling, because there was the second pass interference call. Jordan Love throws it deep. a beautiful ball, but I didn't see as if it was going to be catchable. The receiver would have had a hand on it, but you would be hard pressed to pull it down. And what does Ambry Thomas do? He wraps him up in the middle as the ball's coming down, and I'm like, what the hell is he doing? He's wrapping him up. I'm surprised they
Yeah.
didn't they called the penalty at a reasonable time. I would have pulled the flag out the moment I saw his arm go around him because it was just that egregious. That's definitely something we need to improve on. My biggest thing is time of possession. And we were able
Yeah.
to we split it. It was 30-30 for the time of possession. We controlled the ball through the air. We had better passing yards than they did. My biggest thing was the discipline. You play like you belong there. You play like you've been there before. And those penalties really cost us. And I'm hoping that moving forward as we face and prepare for the Detroit Lions, who is an inexperienced team, they haven't been in the playoffs for how many years? They just got their second playoff win in almost 35 years. We
Yeah.
own the experience. We have the veteran leadership. We've been to the Super Bowl. We have that culture set. So I'm hoping that we use this game as, okay, this is the baseline that we're working with. We know what we have to fix. Let's go handle our business. Let's go reestablish who we are as a team and what we've been known to. And finally, my final point. My biggest point of concern is the health of Deebo Samuel, because we see what that offense looks like when he's not on the floor.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I completely forgot about that. And you see, and that's just a testament to how many weapons you guys have. Debo, and I think this is all, and you guys will probably disagree with me. Horrible play calling. He got the kickoff first. Like, there was no need for him to really return that. I mean, I think it was. I'm pretty sure he caught it deep in the end zone. There was no need for him to return that. He tries to return it. Then they run 3 straight plays towards him. Targeting him catching him, getting tackled twice. His cleat comes off. That's kind of like, if anybody who believes in luck or bad luck, okay, like let's sit him down for a couple plays. His shoe just came off.
Yeah, it's an omen.
So I mean, yeah, that is a sign that, okay, we're going to this guy too much. When you have so much to work with, you got George Kittle, you got McCaffrey, you got IU, you got options to work with. And it felt like there was like Debo, and then now you don't have Debo. So it's interesting. And then they had him come back, which was silly because he literally had to be taken off the field. So you bring a guy back just to take him out again. So essentially, he got taken out twice, right? That made no sense. I mean, especially at this point, I don't think people are thinking that the Packers are going to put up really much of a fight this game. We don't have much. We know, it's okay. You sit this game out, we'll have you for the next one. If I'm the 49ers, that should be my mindset, is that, okay, Debo, you rest this game, and, as soon as, it was bothering him, you rest this game, we'll use you in the next one, or we'll use you in the bowl. The 49ers were playing like they had to have him on the field. Like this was now or nothing, which is concerning to me because, like you said, they're supposed to be there. Like, this is an expectation. This is just another step in their path to get to the Super Bowl. Would you agree?
100%. 100%.
And so I just don't feel like it was necessary to have Debo there at all times. It didn't make any sense. Essentially, they hurt themselves by having him there, and then bringing him back definitely wasn't smart. If I got to start a guy like that, your shoulder hurts, yeah, you sit in a couple quarters. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the play calling at first, but I do feel one thing, the strengths that I will say about the 49ers is their ability to put pressure on quarterbacks. Now, Jordan Love looked much more composed to me than Brock Purdy did. However, he only played like that, because that's his kind of play style, is very calm in the pocket. However, another quarterback would be scrambling all around and trying to escape and, forcing them to throw an interception, which, Jordan Love did throwing a pick. So, to the 49ers testament, they played some great pass rushing. Now, I don't know how this is going to bold against, and honestly, I think that they should beat the Lions, but I said the same thing about them beating the Packers. I don't know how close this game is going to be, but I mean, if you have that type of pressure on any quarterback, right off the bat, you have the advantage that this quarterback needs to get the ball out of their hands, and you guys have a great secondary, which means they're going to be looking for them to make that fast pass that ends up being a pick. So I think you guys played great pass rushing defense. I mean, excellent. It was like, five guys around Jordan Love at all times. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, and they constantly got the pressure. My only complaint was we didn't get any sacks. We were able to get, the pressures, which is valuable in itself. But you got to come home. You got to go all the way and get that sack. And I feel like heading into this game against Detroit, I'm thinking that'll be something we'll be able to see. Jordan Love, I'm not going to call him Lamar Jackson, but let's be real. He's more mobile than a Jared Goff, who is more comfortable staying in the pocket. And when you have a stationary quarterback like that, I feel like we'll be able to get home a lot more often than, say, against a Jordan Love or a Lamar Jackson. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes, 100%. It's going to be, to me, like, and this is a lot. I'm not, I'm a diehard Brady fan. I think Jordan Love has one of the craziest arms I've seen in my, short time on this earth. I see Jordan Love as one of the best passers I have ever seen. And it's just that poise in the pocket. Like I said, you guys had five guys on him at all times. Now, you weren't able to bring him down for one, but that's a testament to his ability and not to you guys' lack of ability. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think, it's always going to be hard to sack a guy like Lamar Jackson, no matter how good your defense is, because obviously, they're rushing at him. He has all the angles. He can go any direction, not to mention get rid of the ball. So, I mean, your pass rushers are at a disadvantage from the get-go. So Jordan Love just played it perfectly. He would oftentimes he would step through the middle, or I saw him rolling to his left, throwing it across his right side of his body. Man, he was making some crazy throws. But I don't believe Jared Goff is Jordan Love. He's not. So, I mean, Jared Goff was struggling to throw spirals with 8 seconds of time. I mean, he can't even throw a tight spiral. Fred Warner's picking that off. It's getting picked off. He's getting sacked. He's not escaping. He got sacked a couple times in the Buccaneers game. So, yeah, it should be an easy walk in the park, like you said. I think this was one of the best things that happened to the 49ers. It was embarrassing to me if I wasn't a 49ers fan that the game was this close. But it's a learning moment. We got to humble ourselves and be like, hey, we needed this so that we can know what we can improve on.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, a wake-up call, and be prepared for the next game. Because I do think Jordan Love, as far as quarterbacks go, till the Super Bowl, that was your hardest foe that you guys would face in the playoffs. Would you agree as far as quarterbacks?
Yeah, no, I would have to agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the most skilled quarterback that you guys would have to go against before the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously, Jalen Hurts getting bounced. But if I'm the 49ers, I'm not worried about Baker Mayfield. I'm not worried baked beans. I'm not worried about him. I'm not worried about, Jared Goff. I mean, these are guys that I'm not thinking like, oh, we have the game plan. Like, you're just going to play it straight up. There's no special contain for Baker Mayfield. So, but Jordan Love, on the other hand, is an X factor where I'm like, okay, I got to think about this, and this. And it shows that they were considering him because they were throwing different rushing and different blitz packages at him that he handled, I would say, pretty well. So I feel like you guys took down the Giant in the playoffs, which not a lot of people expected to be the Giant, but ended up being one. And now it's going to be smooth sailing. Would you agree with that, or do you think that the Detroit Lions will be a tough foe?
I think in terms of quarterbacks, I think you're spot on. Given what was left in the playoffs, heading into it, my concerns were guys like Dak Prescott, who had an MVP caliber season, a Jalen Hurts, who presents that issue with the mobile quarterback, and a Matthew Stafford, who has that veteran experience. Those were the three guys I was looking at and thinking, okay, if we encounter these teams, they're going to give us problems. So when they got bounced in the first round, I'm thinking, okay, the stage is set. the path is cleared. This is our best opportunity to get back to the Super Bowl. We're facing a young quarterback in Jordan Love, and I'm thinking, okay, it's his first postseason. Maybe we should be able to contain him. But as you said, he was an X factor, able to make these spectacular throws on the run, under duress. He impressed me. I think he impressed the whole nation with his play, not only against Dallas, but against the Niners. Now, what we have to work with was either Baker or Jared Goff. And for me personally, that's best case scenario. Baker Mayfield 0-3 against the Niners. Jared Goff 3-5 in his last 7 games against the Niners. Currently on an 0-5 losing streak against us. Now, granted, it's a different team. This was when he was with the Rams. He's now with the Lions. I think our issue against the Lions is going to be the offense. They're ranked number 5 offensively. And if this is how we performed against the Packer team who shouldn't have been there, the Lions are a capable team. They're here for a reason. They won their division. They have a good defense. I won't say great because they have that bend but won't break defense. If they can limit us on the run, that concerns me. But if you look at their defense during the passing game, it's not the best. So when we have guys like Ayuk, George Kittle, Jawan Jennings, who had a great comeback game against the Packers, and hopefully a healthy Debo, because as of right now, of this recording, we don't know his stance for the NFC Championship. He claims to be okay and ready to go, but you got to go through those testing, go through the imaging, and get the okay from the proper personnel. So I'm hoping he'll be playing. He's optimistic, but again, I would be too. If I'm in Debo's position, I'd say I'm okay too because I want to play in the NFC Championship. So we'll have to wait.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see for that diagnosis and prognosis from the medical professionals. Heading into Detroit, I like our odds. I think we should be favored. We're currently favored 6.5 over the Lions, which I expect us to cover.
And is this with or without Debo? Do you think you guys are doing damage without Debo to the Lions, or do you think he greatly helps your chance? Like, what is your stance? Now that you're saying he's questionable, we don't know what's going on with him. Let's say he doesn't play, God forbid. Do you still think this should be, kind of played in you guys' favor?
I think we should still win. I won't say it'll be, decisively. Unfortunately, I think it might be close again, like how it was with the Packers, because with Debo, he adds another layer to the offense. He adds this level of unpredictability, whereas with Christian McCaffrey, he's going to run the ball. Yes, he can pass catch, but he's going to run the ball because he's just that damn good at it. You look at Brandon Ayuk, who's been our vertical threat all year, and then a George Kittle who can block, pass catch, and even run if he has to. But with Debo, as soon as you see him hit that motion, you don't know what to expect. Is he going to get the handoff? Is he going to lead a block? Is he going to catch the ball? He's that exclamation point that's on that offense. When the Golden State Warriors had guys like Draymond Green, who really pisses me off nowadays, and a Stephen Curry, and a Klay Thompson, that's great firepower. But then when you add a Kevin Durant, it's just the cherry on top where it's like, okay, now how do we account for everybody? That's what Deebo Samuel is. So
so you think he's Kevin Durant tier?
I think if we're talking in terms of his importance to the offense and their ability to produce points and move the ball, I think he puts us over the top. I love McCaffrey, and I think he was what we needed for the run game. But Debo, Daniel, you yourself thought he was a running back when he's a wide receiver. That's how he can confuse the defense. He's given our setup and given our scheme. I think ultimately, with or without Debo, we can beat the Lions. But Debo is the difference maker by how much.
So then that answers my question. With him, you think your chances it becomes that decisive win?
Yes.
Okay. So you're going on the record that with Debo, decisive win.
Yes.
What does that look like on a spread? Like, how many points do you think you guys won by? Debo 100% healthy. He's not holding anything back. Scans went through good. MRI good. What are you thinking?
Okay. I'm also taking into account narrative. I'm looking at how they perform with the Packers. I always take that into consideration. Granted, people like to say, oh, one game at a time. We move on to the next one. No, we'd be lying if we didn't say we had a sour taste in our mouth after this last game against the Packers. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, I agree.
Without a Deebo Samuel, I can see us winning 4 points, 6 points. Like, I'm thinking it's that close, Daniel. Debo on the floor. Debo on the floor, minimum 14 points. And I'm thinking,
Oh my, wow.
Dan, and I'm telling you right now, it's only close because in the fourth quarter, Detroit starts scoring again.
That's insane. And it's crazy though, because you say that 4 points, 6 points without Debo.
It's
I don't
that
think
different.
I don't think that plays into Brock's hands. If I'm Brock, right, I'm trying to earn my next contract. I don't want it to be close at all. I mean, because we've seen he doesn't. And listen, I'm gonna pay my respects to Brock because at the end he pulled it together, made some beautiful plays, and got the job done. I do believe that George Kittle was the MVP of that game. He kept you guys into that game. In that game, I mean, he showed off a pass catching ability that I personally, as a casual, haven't seen. I remember asking you guys a long time ago, you and Jared Jose, I was like, who is the best tight end? And you guys said, people say it's Travis Kelce, but George Kittle doesn't get the opportunities that Kelce has. And I had yet to really see Kittle put on that show. Me watching the full game, not highlights of him producing like that. And, I mean, he went out there. He kept you guys in the game. Would you agree that he was your offensive MVP that game?
I'm glad you add offensive because I could see two people on offense that really kept us in the game. One, obviously, being McCaffrey, but George Kittle's contributions, again, it can't be measured. You look at him, and his history has proven. Against the Packers, he's known to have these big games. You go back a couple years ago when Aaron Rodgers was still there, Kittle had a career game. Like, if you thought he was good in this game, go back to like 2021 during that season where he had like a 45 plus touchdown and multiple receptions and was just making these catches and just owned the middle of the field. Offensively, I got to give it to McCaffrey and I got to give it to Kittle. Defensively, Greenlaw and Fred Warner, our linebacker core, I think is second to none. The only ones that I would put on a similar tier would be the Baltimore Ravens, who I think have a hell of a linebacker core themselves. But in terms of MVPs, those are the guys I would give it to. Which leads me to the play calling. You mentioned earlier, what we stepped away from the thing that makes us work the best is the run game. We didn't really run the ball well in the first half, and then in the second half, you can see the shift where it's like, okay, we used McCaffrey more, and that's what we needed to do the whole game. We've proven, and there's a statistic out there, when McCaffrey runs the ball at least 20 times, we don't lose. We don't lose when it's over 20 plus runs attempts. When it's under 20, we're like 3-5. I think it was like 3-5. When he runs over 20 attempts, we don't lose. The run is what sets us up.
But postseason, do you want him having 20-plus carries? I mean, look at the Bills and Chiefs. That was an ugly game. Everyone is getting injured because, you're 20 games deep into the season with the new adding of an extra regular season game. You got 3 playoff games before you can even get to the Super Bowl. I mean, man, that's just heavy hitting. You're essentially getting hit by a car 20 times. Would you agree that you're going to take at least one hit per game? And as a running back, you're going to take a hard hit every time you run the ball. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, McCaffrey is not the guy you want, kind of taking those hits because we've seen that he's been injury prone. Would you agree that he's been an injury prone player?
I wouldn't say injury prone, but he does get banged up. You see him on the side. You see him on the sideline having to get massaged. Yeah, injury prone, I don't know, but like you said, the more often that you run the ball, yeah, you're going to be prone to get those hits. Every time you touch the ball, every time you see that ball, you're going to get hit. So I do agree with that take. That is a fair point.
And so with 20 carries, I mean, man, that's a lot to put. And I think that's in my small sample size, because I will always say this, I am a casual. What I noticed about the 49ers, and this is going positives, negatives, they are very, if it works, do it till it fucking falls off the wheels. I'm telling you. That Debo call was ridiculous. I mean, dude, you would have thought Debo was Randy Moss the way they had him in every single package. Like, they had him in every play. Like, man, they were like, we're going Debo. And that's why they went away from the run game, because McCaffrey was catching those screen passes, and they were doing that for a while to get the first down. So, I mean, the 49ers are going to do something until it just doesn't work anymore. I believe they're trying to guard against him getting injured, because if he runs 20-plus carries, right, and he's getting his first downs, we saw that he was the game changer in the fourth quarter, that he kept the clock running and he kept you guys getting first downs. He was moving the chains. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
That right there, had he been doing that the entire game, who knows if he has the same not only production level, but being it's a playoff game, it's their 19th, 20th game, man, that he could easily sustain an injury like Debo did in the first 5 plays. So, I mean, you just want to be very careful with how you're using your assets. They have, and I agree with you, they should have ran the ball more, but I do think 20 is a lot. I think that's pushing it in postseason, where it's essentially you don't really need to use all them. Have all these carries when you have other weapons. And obviously one got taken away with Debo being injured. But prior to that, you have essentially, Ayuk, Kittle, Debo, McCaffrey, and if you want to count Brock himself as a weapon, you got 5 dudes right there that you can rely on. So if you're talking about 20-plus carries, that not only takes away from, a Kittle's game, who, yes, he's a good run blocker, but we saw how he shined when Brock threw him the ball, correct?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of X factors that stat about you guys not losing with 20 carries that might be right, but is it smart for him to take on the load of the entire offense, for a game that essentially doesn't really matter? Well, it matters that it's postseason, but it's a game that you guys should have won. And this is hindsight. Going into it, this is a game that you guys are expected to win. So why, have him give him his all? Let me break it down like this, Jose. For those who don't know, I'm a collegiate athlete. My coach would always tell us, he would say, guys, you can only dig 2 or 3 times a season. And what that means is when you give every single thing that you got, you can only do that 2 or 3 times a season. And then after that, you either get injured or you don't produce. Your body just can't dig deep down, more than 2 or 3 times a season. And I run track and field and cross country. And I believe that holds true to a lot of different sports. That's why Wembanyama is on a 25-minute restriction. His body isn't there yet for him to be able to dig on a nightly basis without him being injured. Christian McCaffrey doesn't need to dig on the first, their first playoff game. That's not necessary. I believe you save him for when you need him, maybe next game or maybe the Super Bowl, games that count. Having him run 20 carries against the Packers who weren't even supposed to be there, it seems like they made the right call doing that. Well, what is your take on that? Do you think that would you like to see him with 20-plus carries against the Lions?
I hope it doesn't get to that. I hear your point, and I'm going to do one final point because I do want to get to the Lions game after this. But
okay,
with the whole Christian McCaffrey, I hope it doesn't get to that point. I'm not saying we have to run him 20 times, but it's just that number is what popped up, and that's what's worked in the past. What I would have preferred is they would have established that run early. You establish that run early, and then the field opens up, and you're able to disperse the ball to your other weapons. To your point, I don't like that they were overly aggressive with Debo because, as we saw, he's now injured. He's out with that shoulder. When you have an embarrassment of riches of other weaponry that you can use at your disposal, why hone in on only one? You want to be able to keep the defense on their toes and spread the ball out. And now it's like, okay, where are they gonna go? I will give credit to Brock Purdy though. We keep talking about how he underperformed in those first 3 quarters, but I think we can both agree when it mattered most in that fourth quarter, he did what he had to do. He had his first game-winning drive in the postseason against a really good Packer team. I will continue to give them their flowers, no matter how much I disagree with Kevin, who I work with at work and is a mad Packer fan. And he talked trash all week, dude. And it's like I would tell Jared, let him have his moment. They're not supposed to be here. They're not used to it. Let him have his fun, because I was that confident in the Niners. Now, granted, It was closer than I would have liked it, but the better team won, in my opinion. Not to say the Packers aren't good, but I do think the more experienced and the better team found a way and they made the right plays and they won that game.
But is that a surprise to you? I mean, weren't you guys already going into it the better team?
Yeah, then that's why I said, like, it shouldn't have been that close. So me being me,
Yeah.
and you know me, I try to be respectful of everyone's opinions, even if they're wrong, and I say disrespectfully or respectfully, I may disagree. I can't talk trash. I really can't, because the Packers put us on the ropes. Like, that was a wake-up call, and I'm proud to say that we emerged victorious. But yeah, that game in itself is not something to hang our hat on. I definitely think it's something to remember, so we can establish a better run game against the Lions, who
Yeah.
performed really well against Tampa Bay. Would you say that their story in itself is a surprise, or do you think the Lions have played up to their expectation, and are rightfully where they're supposed to be?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think for anyone who is entering a level of greatness, at some point you have to be confident in your own abilities before others are confident in yours. Because